Very interesting. So you mentioned there that, we both mentioned there that you're running a quite low body fat percentage. Why is that the optimal position for somebody to be in? You would have thought, well, ancestrally, the average body fat for somebody that was moving around a lot would have probably been significantly higher. How is it, or what's your thinking behind the fact that in the 5s range, which is like ridiculously lean, why do you think that seems to be optimal as opposed to having higher level of body fat?
Yeah. I mean, in questions like this, I would always defer to my team. I can echo what I've heard them say, but I mean, I learned this as a pilot. I got certified to fly in several airplanes that got typed, but I had a rule for myself that I always flew with someone else who was a professional, because when I was in the cockpit, even though I knew what I was doing, I was never as fluid and as competent as them. That's all they did every day, all day, is thinking about that, versus me jumping in and out. And so, and then also just knowing that if you have 5 longevity experts doing this, they're all going to disagree. But yeah, we've just been following the evidence of, caloric restriction has some meaningful evidence. And we're looking at these lifespan and health span studies, and we try to follow it. And so I don't know if 5% body fat is a target of more of where the body has settled out at.
It's a byproduct of the fact that you're doing this caloric restriction, and that is why your particular body ends up sitting at, somebody else would be at 3.5, someone else would be at 7.5 on the exact same protocol. Okay, interesting. One of the things that I haven't heard you talk about is heat and cold exposure. This is the current most popular bro science approach for a longevity routine. Are you using ice baths? Are you using sauna exposure? Do you consider it a hormesis stressor? Have you tested with it?
We kind of don't do anything that's popular right now. And we've looked pretty carefully at cold and hot exposure. We've looked at hyperbaric, and it's not to say that these things don't have benefit. It's that they don't have benefit in the ways where we have objectives. And so, I mean, there's an unlimited number of things I can do in a given day that would potentially be useful to me, but we have an extremely specific goal of slowing my speed of aging. And when you have that narrow of a goal, it just creates a really clean workspace to say, does this thing have inclusion or does it not? And so, no, we don't do any cold or heat exposure.
That's interesting. I'm starting to kind of get a conception about this single ordinating principle, slow down the speed of aging. That means that there are other things that other people who have slightly different ordinating principles might need to add in. But let's say that it was your goal to optimize dopamine throughout the day. Okay, well, maybe you would look at adding in cold exposure. Maybe you would even look at adding in cold exposure multiple times throughout the day. And maybe you would do some research to look at whatever the equivalent of a circadian rhythm for dopamine is. And well, maybe we can bring it up on flat points, and maybe we can boost it on other points, and maybe we'll be taking a bunch of supplements. And that would be the ordinating principle if we want to maximize dopamine throughout the day. It's interesting that slowing the speed of aging, and you would have done it had it have been something that you think would have contributed to it, hasn't folded heat and cold exposure in. You said we're not doing the things that other people are doing, but you're not doing them because other people, you're not doing them because other people do them. You're not doing them because presumably the data doesn't suggest that it's something that would be worthwhile.
Yep. Again, very well said.
But it's strange that it's not looking at the data. The data isn't screaming at you, get in a fucking cold tub or like go in a sauna. Like it's strange that that's not happened, I think.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's hard. I really, I get asked about cold exposure, I think, more than anything. And, my objective is not to rain on anyone's parade. It's not to discourage anyone who's trying to do good for themselves. It's not to try to be a know-it-all. I've just really not wanted to engage in the conversation. It's not part of my protocol. Fine, whatever. I don't need to go out and trumpet it. And I don't want, if other people are excited about it, that's wonderful. But really, this is trying to move the entire field forward. And, I think there's a certain disposition that helps people feel encouraged. And so maybe we'll find the evidence, and maybe it'll be something we do in the future. Like I never know. Like I every time I've expressed an opinion, I've come back to think I'm never expressing an opinion again, because you just never know where it's going to go. But I will say that with what we're doing now with sleep and diet and exercise, maybe it solves my dopamine for me. I don't know. I mean, I don't currently have a dopamine problem. I think like my mood has never been more stable in my entire life. I've never felt more motivated in my entire life. And so it's just different ways of saying it. But I think what you said really was a nice construction, where if you don't have the clarification of endpoint, then it really gets in this fuzzy space of where you don't really know where to put that piece of the puzzle, and then people can misinterpret how to think about it.